Okay, we are going to begin. I invite everybody to close your eyes and take a nice big deep breath. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. All right, we're going to start on a new section. Oh, and you might notice that the setting is a little bit different here. Class today, the Zoom recording just wasn't cooperating, so I'm doing this from my home this time. All right, so the section we're going to work on is called Beyond the Body, and it is on text 384. And we're going to start with paragraph number 1. So there's nothing outside you. That is what you must ultimately learn, for it is the realization that the kingdom of heaven is restored to you. For God created only this, and he did not depart from it, nor leave it separate from himself. The kingdom of heaven is the dwelling place of the Son of God, who left not his Father and dwells not apart from him. Heaven is not a place, nor a condition. It is merely an awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else, nothing outside this oneness, and nothing else within. So I kind of chuckle when I read the first line. There's nothing outside of you. Well, we're all sitting in a room, and there's perhaps people around you, and there are, maybe your TV, your chairs, whatever is surrounding you. And yet Jesus is starting out this paragraph with this simple statement: there is nothing outside of you. How do we wrap our head around that concept? And yet what it's trying to help us understand is anything we experience on the outside is actually coming from the inside. It goes on to say that is what you must ultimately learn, for it is the realization that the kingdom of heaven is restored to you, because the kingdom of heaven is within you. You haven't left home. Everything is intact. For God created only this, and he did not depart from it, nor leave it separate from himself. So all there really is the concept of heaven and oneness. It was only when we chose to separate that we had the experience of more, of other, of not the same. But in truth, there's only oneness. There is no duality. There is just oneness. The kingdom of heaven is the dwelling place of the Son of God, capital S, Son, who left not his Father and dwells not apart from him. So basically, Jesus is describing the experience of our true reality. If we look on this chart, sorry, I don't have it available, but we'll get one out right now. That when we seem to separate from the love of God, in truth, this is just the dream. This is just the illusion, that we're really aligned with the Father, and only the aspects of the Father really are real. And Jesus, throughout the course, will often say something to the effect that it seems that we've separated. It seems like there's two choices, but in truth, only one of them is true. And the only one that's true is that you are the Holy Son of God, and nothing of the illusion has ever affected, penetrated, or made a difference to your world. And we know if you have the sun and it's covered over with a cloud, it can look almost like nighttime in your life experience. But we know the sun is still shining. The sun has not moved. The sun is just equally as well as it was before that cloud covered over it. And we know that one of the foundational concepts of the Course is this is about removing the blocks to the awareness of love. And if you call the sun love, it's about removing the blocks, which are all the things that we've placed on our altar that are not true. And that would literally be everything of the separated state. And that's why Jesus starts this paragraph out by saying, there is nothing outside you. And this is really an affirmation. I'll read the line again. The kingdom of heaven is the dwelling place of the Son of God, who left not his Father and dwells not apart from him. And Jesus is basically affirming to us that who you really are. The Son has not changed. It's simply the experience that it has because of the belief in separation. But in truth, it really has not shifted at all. And we're still at home in the loving arms of God. Goes on to say heaven is not a place or a condition. Lots of times people will say, well, where is heaven? What do I have to do to get to heaven? Well, you need to remove the blocks that cover heaven, and then you will experience what was there all the time. It is merely an awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else, nothing outside this oneness and nothing else within. So the sun is the sun. That's all. The clouds mean nothing. They are just a belief that is being experienced while we believe in the separation. And again, he is trying to help us understand that imperfect oneness and the knowledge that there's nothing else. There is just the experience of oneness. But when we believe in separation, when we accept it, took it seriously, and live it from that point of view, we have the experience that there seems to be another experience besides just the experience of love, oneness, wholeness, and a connection with the will of God. And Jesus is trying to help us recognize that it's, you've chosen to separate, and most religions would call that sin. That's not forgivable, that is wrong, is bad. And Jesus is very specific in the Course of helping us understand that it was a mistake, no question about it, but it's not a sin. It can be forgiven. And ultimately, it never really was. It was just a silly dream of which we took very seriously. And we've been asleep for so long that it's time for us to wake up. And literally, Jesus is offering the roadmap for us to learn how to wake up, starting with the concept of, how this got set up, where we find ourselves, and what needs to be done from there. So if we look at this chart, when we separated from the love of God, we made this whole side of the chart. Everything on this side of the chart is in opposition to this side of the chart. This represents the memory in our mind of what truth is. This represents the belief system that we've aligned with as a separated son of God. But Jesus would say this only seems to be real. Only this is a reflection of that true reality. But as long as we hold firm to believing that the dream is our reality, we don't have access to that answer. And basically, the Course is here to help us recognize that we're not brain dead, because before, all we knew was this little box here. And our only ability to do anything would be to fix or change or, yell at somebody, try to manipulate the world in some way so that I could feel a little bit better. And we know in workbook lesson number 5, it states the idea, I'm never upset for the reason I think. I always think I'm upset for some situation that's going on here. But in truth, Jesus is helping us to be reminded, you're not upset because of this, you're upset because of this. And we often give the ego, I would say, a bad rap because we blame the ego as being the problem. But the ego is not really the problem. The ego is really an effect of the problem, which was choosing against what we are as love and as the Holy Son of God. And when we did that, we took on a new identity. It'd be much like Halloween. You put on your Halloween costume, and the whole evening you play out this part of something other than what you are. And hopefully by the end of the evening, you take off that costume and then you are back to the memory of who you are. Well, this is just one big costume. But again, the problem is not the costume. The problem is that we chose to identify with the costume, and then we forgot that the costume is not who we are. And that the ego really does not exist. But to the degree we identify with the ego, we will reap the effects of that belief system. All right, so paragraph number 2. What could God give but knowledge of himself? What else is there to give? The belief that you could give and get something else, something outside yourself, has cost you the awareness of heaven and of your identity. And you have done a stranger thing than you yet realize. You have displaced your guilt to your body from your mind. Yet a body cannot be guilty, for it can do nothing of itself. You who think you hate your body deceive yourself. You hate your mind, for guilt has entered into it, and it would remain separate from your brothers, which it cannot do. So the first question is, what could God give but knowledge of himself? Well, if you think of the rays of a sun emitting outward from the sun, everything that the sun emits is a part of him, is an extension of him. And that's all that God has to offer us. So as he says, what else is there to give? I simply give you what I am. And I don't have the chart that I have of the throne, and either God is on that throne and we get the results and the effects of that choice, which are love and peace, joy and connectedness and oneness, or we have to kick God off the throne, and then the ego sits on the throne, and the effects of that choice are guilt, sin, and fear, separation, and division. So again, what would God give but knowledge of himself? He can only extend the love that he is. And when we enter into a phase of anything else besides that, we have broken off and made a world to reinforce the belief that we have experienced. And we did that because once we separated from the love of God, we had this horrific terror, anxiety, upset, and fear, because we were in light and love, and suddenly we were hurled into the darkness of this abyss of insanity, and we didn't know what to do with it. We were too afraid to go back to God because we didn't trust God, because we believed we killed off God to exist. So the way we handled it was we projected into the world and put all the guilt, sin, and fear out into the world, thinking we got rid of it. But as we will read in a little while, we'll recognize we didn't get rid of it. We just projected it into the world. But I can now play the part of an innocent victim and make somebody else be the problem, which keeps this perpetuated, because as long as I'm playing in this arena, I don't step up here where the real problem is. I just live in the effect, and I push things around a bit, thinking I've accomplished something, when in truth, I have not. The belief that you could give and get something else, something outside yourself, has cost you the awareness of heaven and your identity. Because when we're aligned with the ego, we now forget who we are as the Son of God, our identity, and we have displaced heaven with the separated state and experience. So we're no longer aligned with the memory of who we are. We've accepted the lie of the separated state. And I love this line, you have done a stranger thing than you yet realize. So what does that mean? What it means is this is a strange thing to do when we could be home in the arms of the loving God. But because of our fear of the love of God, we made this strange, crazy experience. And why are you saying that you don't even understand or realize how strange it is? Because we're so enmeshed in the effects of this choice that we don't even realize that it's literally cost us our experience of oneness and love and connecting in that place of heaven and our true identity. Again, we were wearing the costume. We have forgotten that we're in a costume. We now live as though we were the character in the costume, and we've totally closed the door to the memory of what and who we really are to do. And the interesting thing is you have to displace your guilt to your body from your mind. So we're no longer aligned with the mind. We now believe we are the body, which means unless I go back to the mind, I can never heal the situation of separation. It's forever this place of chasing my tail within the illusion, trying to make it a little bit more comfortable so I can survive another day. But it won't give me access to choosing again if I don't know that this is the problem and not this. It goes on to say, you have displaced your guilt to your body from your mind. So we relinquished our mind, focused on our body, and now we think the body and what happens with the body is the problem. And it's a tricky thing because think about it. What do we spend 99% of our day on is something to do with the body, taking care of it, feeding it, clothing it, working so I can make money to provide for our house. You name it, it's all body oriented. And seldom do we connect with the mind. Goes on to say, yet a body cannot be guilty, for it can do nothing of itself. So the body, again, is not the problem where the problem lies. It's the choice for separation that is the problem. But as long as we're body focused, we don't even know we have a mind that set this up. So again, we're going to be chasing our tail, trying to solve the problem where the problem literally cannot be solved. All right. You think you hate your body. You think you hate your body, and you deceive yourself. So we think we hate our body, and most people aren't too happy with their body. There's always some flaw or something I wish would be different so that I could be okay with myself. But the bottom line is, since the body was made from something that's less than perfect, it's going to be less than perfect. And we are going to believe that the body is who I am, and we're going to constantly be in an experience that is not going to be very comfortable for us. And even the most gorgeous movie star or model, if you ask them, will share a flaw with you that they wish was not there, because in the quest for perfection in a place that perfection doesn't live, we will then feel less than. But the truth is, we already felt less than, and then we made a body that was flawed so that we would then reinforce that belief system. You hate your mind, for guilt has entered into it, and it would remain separate from your brothers, which it cannot do. But as long as we believe we're identified with the body, we can remain separate from our brother, and we believe our brother is different than us. But in truth, if we're all one, how could my brother be separate from me? And again, that would be only experienced if I'm aligned with the ego or the separated mind, because the whole setup of this is to be the experience where I am separate from my brother. My brother's the problem. I'm the innocent victim. If he would do something else, then I could be okay. But I'm never going to be okay as long as I identify with the separated aspect of my mind. So again, it's like smoke and mirrors. We're focusing over here so the magician can pull off a magic trick. But if we really watched carefully, we would see exactly what he was doing and realize, he didn't really cut that woman in half. He made it appear as though he cut the woman in half. But in truth, he really didn't. It's just part of the magic trick of the ego. And again, he ends that line with which it cannot do. Well, it cannot really do this because, again, everything in the cloud or everything in the ego is not really real. So it cannot really affect the truth of who you are. It can only be experienced when you align with the ego. And unfortunately, we align with the ego most of our day. And that's why Jesus wants us to spend more and more time, aligned with our right mind. But the only way I can access my right mind is to realize the problem's not here, the problem is here, and recognize that I do have another choice. And when I'm ready to make that other choice, that choice is available. And that's where the real undoing response will take place. Paragraph number 3. Minds are joined, bodies are not. Only by assigning the mind the properties of the body does separation seem to be possible. And it is mind that seems to be fragmented and private and alone. Its guilt, which keeps it separate, is projected to the body, which suffers and dies because it is attacked to hold the separation in the mind and let it not know its identity. Mind cannot attack, but it can make fantasies and direct the body to act them out. Yet, it is never what the body does that seems to satisfy. Unless the mind believes the body is actually acting out its fantasies, it will attack the body by increasing the projection of its guilt upon it. Whew, that's a mouthful. All right, so minds are joined. When you're literally choosing for this, you're joining as one. So they're all joined. When you're identifying with the separated state, it's always going to be more than one. It's division, it's separation versus oneness. And so when you step over here, you're automatically aligning with the mind that is aligned with oneness. So you will then see your brother and you as the same, notice same, instead of different. Even if you're looking out in the world and you see a quote unquote separated being from you, you will know we're all coming from the same mind. So only by assigning to the mind the properties of the body does separation seem to be possible. And again, here's that word seem or seems. That when you're reading through the course, really pay attention when that word comes up, because what that means is there really wasn't a separation, but it definitely seems like there was a separation. And one of the ways that we keep the separation going is to play in the body and think that the body is what's going on, is the cause, is the effect, when in truth, it is the choice or the belief or the thought that is causing the projection on the screen to look like the projection's the problem. And we all know if we go to the movie theater and we watch a movie on the screen, we know our favorite actor is not in the room, right? But when we see it on the screen, we can be affected by it. It can bring up emotional experiences. It can frighten us. It can make us happy. It can make us laugh. But on a level within, we know unequivocally that that character isn't even in the room. Well, the same experience is experienced here. So when we assign to the mind the properties of the body, when only by assigning to the mind the properties of the body does separation seem to be possible. So only when we project into the world and think we're the body can we pull this off and really believe that this is real. And it certainly does seem like it's real, correct? And it is mind that seems to be fragmented and private and alone. So again, those are the results of choosing for separation. I now feel lonely, I feel private, and I feel fragmented. So what the answer for most egos is to seek but not find something or someone that will fill in that space so I don't feel like I'm alone or fragmented anymore. But the problem with that is the character I am searching for can never fulfill what I really want from them because they are just as fragmented and alone and private as we are. So we really can't get something from the separated state that's going to fill us up like the experience of anything in the aspect of oneness. It's not capable of it. No matter how hard someone might try to appease you or satiate you, it's never going to happen because it can't be done over here. It's almost as though there's a dictionary for this part of the chart, and then there's another dictionary for this part of the chart. And the dictionaries are totally different. And what we're looking for over here is over here. And it can't fulfill us over here because we have to step over here in order to read this dictionary. All right. But again, the final results of having made that choice is always fragmented and a private and an experience of being alone. So what do good little egos do? They look for things in the world. This is the little character called the hero of the dream, or who I identify with. So I'm always looking in the world for things that are going to fill me up. But when I'm looking in a world of duality, I might find things that'll fill me up. But the downside of that roller coaster are all the what we would call negative things. And most of us want to just have positive things. But you can't have just positive things in a world of duality. It just doesn't work. So we're constantly trying to find things to fill us up, whether it's food, a relationship, drugs, being a workaholic, a shopaholic, whatever it may be. It's always to still that aloneness or that fragmentation. And for a little while, it does feel better. So, and of course, it's not saying, obviously it's not saying don't eat, but it's not saying to quest after those things. But as you begin to observe and watch yourself questing after those, and you begin to recognize that even when I get something that fulfills me for 10 minutes, in a very short period of time, it's no longer works. And it's almost like the person that's a drug addict, they get that amazing high, and then they need to have it again to bring them to that place. But it's almost like that first high that came up to here, the next time the high only comes up to here. So they have to continue to take more and more and more to fill that up, to make it have that same sensation of fullness, but it can never really fill us up. Its guilt, which keeps it separate, is projected to the body, which suffers and dies because it is attacked to hold the separation in the mind and let it not know its identity. So the results of choosing for the body and living from the point of view of the body is always going to be the effects of the belief that you are the body. And what comes with that is, as it says, it suffers and it dies. Well, it suffers and it dies, and we keep being disappointed because we have death in our life, and we cry because somebody leaves. We're afraid of the day when we won't exist as well, because we're focusing on the belief system of the body. And that's the automatic result of that investment. It can't not come forth that way. And when we do that, again, we're focused on the body. And as long as we're doing that, we cannot know our true identity, because again, you're aligned with this or you're aligned with this at any given moment. You can't have them both. It's one or the other. And again, if you order a package from Amazon and it comes to your door and you begin to open it, and if you opened it up and you realized, oh my gosh, this package has suffering and death. I don't think I wanted suffering and death. I wanted to be an individual, special and different, but I didn't want that. And when you start to unwrap that package, the Course is saying, observe, become aware what came with ordering that package. Because as you begin to become aware of what came with ordering that package, then it will begin to dawn on your mind, that wasn't a really good package. I don't think I really want that package. I want the package of love and connectedness and oneness. And when that starts to dawn on your mind, when you start to be in an experience of conflict with that person, and that little part of your mind that remembers, whispers in your ears, you could have peace instead of this. You could choose to connect with love. And one day that'll happen and you'll go, yes, I don't want to play this game of the roller coaster ride anymore. I really want the connection of peace and love and oneness. This is not worth it any longer. But in the meantime, if you find yourself diving right into the conflicts of the world, know that with that is going to come all the effects attached to this, which again are suffering, death, aloneness, fragmentation, lack, because that's the words in the dictionary of the ego. All right, it goes on to say, mind cannot attack, though it appears that it can. It's saying it can't attack, but it can make fantasies and direct the body to act them out, because that's what the puppeteer is doing with the puppet called the body. It is setting up a storyline of which there is going to be separation. And then again, the results that separation brings. So again, mind cannot attack, but it can make fantasies and direct the body to act them out. So the belief in separation would be the fantasy. And then the puppeteer directs the puppets, of which I think I am one of them. But actually, all the puppets in my dream are coming from my mind of the belief in separation. Mind cannot, I already read that one. Yet it is never what the body does that seems to satisfy, because the body can't be satisfied. It's only the mind that chooses for oneness that will bring us the true satisfaction that we are looking for. Unless the mind believes the body is actually acting out its fantasies, it will attack the body by increasing the projection of its guilt upon it. So when we believe in the separation and believe the fantasies in the storyline, we're constantly going to believe we're the body, and we're going to continue to perpetuate and project all the guilt that's really in our mind. So it doesn't get healed, it just gets recycled. The only way it can be healed is to drop this entire story, open your hands to an answer beyond and different than anything that takes place in the dream. And then the Holy Spirit takes over and brings you a shift in your mind of a healed experience instead of a separated experience. But in the meantime, we will always have that experience of guilt, because it is the guilt that we've projected out into the world that we now live through. You could almost say, like, if you were in an English class and your teacher said, okay, I want you to go home this weekend and I want you to write a dualistic story where there's a roller coaster ride and there's good and there's bad and there's a belief in separation. You would write the story with all the details that support that story. And then maybe 2 weeks later, she might come and say, okay, we're going to act this out. And that's basically what we're doing. We're acting out the storyline of the ego. And the storyline of the ego is separation. And what comes with separation is guilt, sin, and fear, suffering, pain, duality, differences. And so we pop into the world as this body, and all of this has been in place because we put it in place, and we pop into it, and it appears as though I'm an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control of this world that's already here. But we don't realize that we were actually the ones that wrote this story, that now we are actually playing out one of the characters. And be aware that within the dualistic world, there is more than one character. There's the me, and then there's a something else. And the first something else was the God that we projected our guilt, sin, and fear on. And then from that point on, we began to project it on other people. Sometimes we project it on our own physical body in the means or the way of illness or difficulties with our body. But somebody's the problem. It's not me. I'm the innocent victim of whatever takes place in my world. And Jesus keeps coming back to us and says, that is your experience. We have to respect that. But I want to show you a higher way of understanding this, a higher way of looking at this, so that you can eventually undo this seeming reality and come back to the alignment of your true self. All right, so paragraph number 4. In this, the mind is clearly delusional. It cannot attack, but it maintains it can, and uses what it does to hurt the body to prove it can. The mind cannot attack, but it can deceive itself, and this is all it does when it believes it has attacked the body. It can project its guilt, but it will not lose it through projection. And though it clearly can misperceive the function of the body, it cannot change its function from what the Holy Spirit establishes it to be. The body was not made by love, yet love does not condemn it and can use it lovingly, respecting what the Son of God has made, and using it to save him from illusions. So he's basically saying to us, in this, the mind is clearly delusional, because the mind has accepted a reality that is not its true self, not its true identity. And when it does that, it's living in a belief system in opposition to what it really is. And all its attributes are hidden behind the curtain of the cloud of the ego. It cannot attack, but it maintains it can. So ultimately, it really can't attack because nothing it does is actually real. But when it's playing the part, it can maintain. It maintains that it can hurt, and uses what it does to hurt the body to prove it can. So it takes this fantasy of a body, projects the guilt into it, and then it plays the part as though that was true and the reality. So the mind cannot attack, but can deceive itself. Well, we've deceived ourselves since the moment that separation took place and we took it seriously. We've literally lived in a world of deception. And I kind of like this little chart. We're living in a lie. Truth is here where we're all one, but we've chosen the lie. And literally everything that takes place within this side of the chart is based on that lie. And we will see the world through that lens. All the while, truth is over here waiting patiently for us to drop this story and move over here. And this is all it does when it believes it has attacked the body. So it's believing a story, it's deceiving itself, it makes this story appear to be real, and it lives as though it was real. But the whole time, it's really not real. And as Jesus said, and we talked about, it seems to be real as long as we identify with it. It can project its guilt, but it will not lose it through projection. And there's a number of places throughout the course where it says that basically thoughts leave not their source. You can project that information out, but you haven't really gotten rid of it. But because we drew this line where we forgot that we were the ones that had that guilt in our mind, and then we live in this square, we really believe somebody else is doing this to us. But in truth, we set it up, we jumped in, and we're just playing this silly part of me being an innocent victim because we're afraid to go back to oneness. And the whole purpose of the course is to help us understand this, begin to practice this, and eventually live this so that we can drop this storyline and then realign to what our true identity is. But this is very important. It can project its guilt, but it will not lose it through projection. So the guilt remains, only I don't believe it's in me. I believe it's in you. And that's why when my brother does something, it triggers something in me. If I was over here and somebody called me a name, it wouldn't affect me at all because I know who I am. But because that underlying guilt has not really gone anywhere, when somebody says something or does something to me, I immediately react to it because it actually triggers the guilt that is in my mind. And when we choose for guilt, the effects are going to be, there is going to be punishment because I think I did something wrong. And though it clearly can misperceive the function of the body, it cannot change its function from what the Holy Spirit established it is. I'm going to read that again. All right. And although it clearly can misperceive the function of the body, it cannot change its function from what the Holy Spirit establishes it to be. So we can, again, manipulate the body, do all kinds of things with the body that represent the effects of having chosen for the separation. But again, the separation isn't real, so it literally can't really have an effect on it. All right, so the body was not made by love. Nothing here on this side of the chart is made of love. Love is not in this dictionary. Only love can be found over here. So as long as we're looking for love in this arena, it will always be a false sense of love as it's described as, where's that word? did I not put that there? Oh my goodness, is special. Oh, here it is, special love. And it's a special love because it's not the love of this, it's a special love of I'm going to give you something so that you give me something and I get the better deal out of this. Well, that's not love. Love is continual, extending, consistent, and forever flowing freely as an experience. There is no contract with this love. There's only a contract with this love. All right, so again, the body is not made by love because the ego is the choice in opposition to love. Unequivocally, everything of the ego is in opposition to the truth of love. But I like this next line. Yet love does not condemn it and can use it lovingly, respecting what the Son of God has made and using it to save him from illusions. Well, how cool is that? So what we did is we set this up to have the body be the issue and the plan, but the results of that was that things from the outside seemed to disrupt my peace. So now, as he said, love cannot be found here, but we can now use the setup of the ego here, and we can use it for another purpose. So now, instead of when something or someone triggers me and I point the finger and blame them on it, I use the fact that I can have my peace disrupted as a reminder. Oh, that's right. I have lost my peace because of this choice. And then at that time, I have the power or the ability to make another choice. As long as I'm just in this little box where I seem to be an effect of the circumstances beyond my control, I can never find my way out of the box because I am the innocent victim of this box. And be very aware that I can't be an innocent victim as long as I have a perpetrator. Notice over here, there is no perpetrator. We are the same. But in order to keep this storyline going, I need to have something or someone be the problem so that I can play the part of an innocent victim. Such a vital aspect of the Course. So again, we can now use the body with a loving purpose, and instead of for the attack and kill or be killed. And there's actually a line near the beginning of the Course where it specifically states this idea. This is not a course on denial of the body. There are other spiritualities out there that it is about the denial of the body. This Course really needs the body because the only way I can tell what's going on in my mind is by the effects in the world. So if I can have my peace disrupted, it's because of this choice. And the only way I can ever become aware of that is by my response to my lack of peace in the world. So literally, in that context, my brother becomes my salvation because he's his triggers are the only way I know what's going on here. If I'm just walking along through life thinking everything's just wonderful, I'm a sweet little innocent victim, and the problem is not me, it's never going to be healed. But if I recognize, I got triggered by something that occurred in the world, that's telling me that this is engaged and I can do something different. And that, as he says, will help save you from the illusions. All right, paragraph number 5. Would you not have the instruments of separation reinterpreted as means for salvation and used for purposes of love? Would you not welcome and support the shift from fantasies of vengeance to release from them? Your perception of the body can clearly be sick, but project not this upon the body, for your wish to make destructive what cannot destroy can have no real effects at all. What God created is only what he would have it be, being his will. You cannot make his will destructive. You can make fantasies in which your wills can limit. You can make fantasies in which your will conflicts with his, but that is all it is. So in this first line, Jesus is actually saying to us, would you not have the instruments of separation reinterpreted as a means for salvation and used for purposes of love? So are you willing to take the story that you have chosen and have it reinterpreted through the Holy Spirit so that you will know who your true identity is, and you will know what the true identity of your brother is, and you will know the true identity of what God is as well? He's asking us, is that what you want? Are you willing to do what is required to have that be accomplished? I'm going to read that again because I think it's rather sweet. Would you not have the instruments of separation reinterpreted as means for salvation and used for purposes of love? So take the issue and let's find a way to reinterpret it and realign with the love that's always been there. But as long as this shadow or the cloud covers this over, we won't know that love. Would you not welcome and support the shift from fantasies of vengeance to release from them? Because when we're living in a dualistic world, it's me against you. So I will always have a vengeance towards my brother because I think my brother's the problem. It's a false pretense that's been set up so that we will see our brother through that lens. But the truth is, it's a false pretense because my brother and I are the same and we are actually only love. But as long as we believe in the cloud or the blocks, we're going to see our brother through a lens where I have an issue with my brother, of which we're calling it vengeance. And he's saying, again, do you want to be released from these fantasies? I've got the key. I've got the formula. I can show you how we can do this. But you have to be willing to allow that to happen. And the way you are willing is you have to be willing to drop your story of your brother. You can't take your brother's and your story of your brother and come over here because that's dualistic. It's kill or be killed. It's separating, and it can't walk over here. Now that doesn't mean the moment there's an issue that you're going to be able to just flip this over. In fact, I would say there's a real good chance it may take some practice before you get to that point. So you start with your natural response to kill or be killed, because literally we've been set up to be kill or be killed vehicles. So you start by observing the reaction you have to what's going on in the world. And when you can come to that place of calmness and then open up your mind, drop the story and let his story fill that space, then you're saying, what have you got for me instead of what I'm seeing in my experience? Again, you can't have both of them. I have to be willing to relinquish everything I see as vengeance towards my brother, or myself for that matter. I mean, we self-hate all over the place, don't we? I mean, am I ever nice to myself? Not very often. I can use this for myself, towards my brother, towards a situation, an incident in the world. Doesn't matter. Has my peace been taken away? And, the Course is very unequivocal about that as well, that you're either at peace or you're not at peace. And it absolutely makes no difference what caused the lack of peace. If you're not at peace, you're over here. So when you can kind of backtrack and become aware, if I'm not at peace, that's a red flag. I'm aligned with this. And now I know I have the option to do something different. And again, all we're really removing are the fantasies that we've accepted as our reality. But they're not real. They're part of the lie. They're keeping us from experiencing the truth because we've identified so much with the lie that we have forgotten that truth is our true identity. And as long as we play in the arena of the lie, we have no access to this. All right, your perception of the body can clearly be sick, but project not this upon the body. All right, so what he's saying is you can look at the body, see it's sick, but what we're being asked to do is come back to the mind and recognize the puppet is just playing out the storyline of the choice in the mind. So the problem can't be solved here, but if we rise above and recognize that the problem is in the mind that is projected into the body, a problem, but heal the mind by making another choice, then it doesn't matter to you what's going on with the body because you're aligned totally with the mind of love, and the rest of it will take care of itself. For you wish to make destructive what cannot destroy, can have no real effects at all. We've made something appear to be the problem and the destruction, when in truth, it's not where the issue even lies. And there in the workbook lessons, it talks about the idea, there's one problem, one solution. Well, that's not my experience here. There seems to be a bazillion different problems, and I'm always looking for the next solution. But what he's saying is, if all problems come from the belief of separation, splintered out into many different facets that all look different, but in truth, they're all coming from the separated mind that believes this is our reality, then when we step over here, all the problems will begin to be resolved because they're really coming from the mind that believes in separation that's now been shifted to the mind of healing. And then healing will be reflected in the world instead of guilt, sin, and fear that is being projected in the world as a result of choosing for the ego. All right. You cannot make his will destructive. So how could, I'm sorry, I think I missed a line there. What God created is only what he would have it be, being his will. So what God created was truth and love, and that remains the same. And the Son has all the attributes of that truth and love. But if we choose to separate from that truth and love, we'll experience something totally different than what that is. And the results will be identification with the lie or the Halloween costume, whatever you want to call it, the belief in the ego. But the will of God always remains exactly the same. It doesn't change. We change. And the only way we can align with peace is when we reconnect with the truth of what peace is. Goes on to say, you can make fantasies in which your will conflicts with his, but that is all it is. How can you make a fantasy reality? It's impossible. Now we can experience it as though it were real, as we obviously have done for eons of time. But what he's saying is it can't really be done. And thank goodness it can't really be done, because if it could really be done, we would be in a big trouble because there would be no way out. But we can only remove those blocks that will expose what the truth is. And now we have the tools to be able to do that. Before, again, we were so caught up in the lie that we only knew how to manipulate the world to make things a little bit better for me. And we didn't care if we did harm to our brother. But this is saying, as you remove this story, that's when you can see your brother clearly, yourself clearly, and your Father clearly. Because it's like the Trinity. If I'm aligned over here, I cannot experience my God. My God is love. I can't experience myself as love. And I can't experience my brother as love. Because again, love is not a word in this dictionary. Love lives over here. And as we step from here to here, then we have access to that love. As long as we're reinforcing this, we continue to perpetuate the absence of love. And we perpetuate the belief in the guilt that is so alive and well over here. So instead of experiencing love, we're going to continue to always experience guilt, which then demands punishment and then sin, and on the storyline goes. And that everything we look at will be a perpetuation of that belief system. And the tricky thing with this is, let's say this situation, this problem is caused, or this person is causing you a problem. So you get rid of them. Maybe you divorce them. Maybe you move away from them, whatever it may be. It's going to be replaced by another aspect of this belief system because the belief system hasn't been healed. So it's almost like you erase this one and another one will replace it because the problem or the cause has not been solved. And until the problem has been solved, it's going to re-perpetuate itself. And again, with the idea of the projector, until we, this is the light, this is the film, and then it gets projected on the screen. Until we take the film out and just have light, the film is going to project on the screen, and we're going to see some form of the cloud that keeps us from experiencing the sun. And it's, again, a setup that has kept us very perpetuated within the context of the illusion of the separated state. And it's been a no-brainer. And, we've gotten so accustomed to the effects of the separation, for the most part, until things get so painful that we don't even know that that's what we're up to. And again, the Course is here to show us that there is another way. And when we're ready to choose that, it is available. But again, before we only knew of what we could do here. So it's important that we also recognize that no matter what you've ever done or what you're doing, not to put too much emphasis on the guilt of it, because the guilt is being projected automatically from this choice. And so if I wallow in the guilt instead of go to the cause and remove the cause of the guilt, I'm then just reinforcing the guilt. And we really want to drop the beliefs and the investment in the guilt so that we can expose what the truth is. So there's lots to be a practice here in this experience, and the development of that awareness that when I get triggered by something in the world, to move as quickly as possible to wait a minute, it's not really what's happening here, as workbook lesson number 5 states. I'm not upset for this. I'm upset for the cause, and the cause being the engagement of this belief system of the ego that's not real. So as we keep practicing this, excuse me, we will start to respond more speedily in, wait, it's not about this, it's about this, and now I can do something about it. But in my experience, pardon me, it takes a long time before we completely and digest this whole idea so that it then becomes easy to just pop over here instead of play in the ego arena. But as our desire to transcend the dualistic experience keeps coming to the surface, it will eventually take us to that new experience of re-identifying, reinterpreting what our true identity is. And again, it remains. All the things of the illusion will then simply fall away. Just like on a sunny day, all the clouds are gone and I only see the sunshine. Where did the clouds go? They dissipated. They no longer exist in that experience. Well, the same thing will happen in our experience. The dream of separation will dissipate and eventually move aside because of our choice to identify with what is true. And it's not me that figures out what the effects of choosing for the truth is. That's none of my business. My job is to choose. What comes forth is, again, not of me. But the beauty of that is many people, when they describe the effects of choosing differently, will say, gosh, this is way beyond anything that I would have manipulated in my world. And it's usually much better than what I could have figured out. And as that begins to happen more and more frequently, we'll trust this process more and more frequently. And the reminder that, oh, that's what I want. I don't want to keep playing in this arena will start to dawn on us. And when we realize that perpetuating this continues to bring us pain, continues us to bring us suffering and loneliness, and all the other attributes of the ego, it will dawn on us and more frequently that when something over here starts to come to the surface, it will catch it more quickly and realize, I don't want to go down that avenue anymore. So I think we will end there because that's where we ended in class, and we will come back next week and we will continue reading this section. So if anybody wants to read ahead, you're welcome to do so because we will continue with this section next week. So with that, I invite everyone to close your eyes, take a nice big deep breath. Oh. And join me with the prayer. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen. So go forth and enjoy your week. Observe, pay attention. Catch those moments where you find yourself in a dualistic experience and question, am I willing to choose for those blocks, or do I really want to know what the sun or the light or the connection with oneness is? See you next week.